For more on this, I'm now joined by a humanitarian campaigner, Mukhtar Karim. Mukhtar, very good to see you. So what do you make of Dominic Raab's visit? Will it change anything?
I don't think that very much stands to be changed on the ground. The conditions there, and particularly in the Gaza Strip, with the identification of 4 cases of COVID last night, and the Gaza Strip being on lockdown for at least 48 hours, creates a really tight humanitarian crisis. 90% of the water supply in the Gaza Strip is not fit for use, and we've got 3 to 4 hours of electricity per day to those, to the residents of the Gaza Strip. So in amongst that, a very, very tight humanitarian situation now made immensely worse for the day workers there, who are reliant on day-to-day earnings and a huge food scarcity. So I don't see how, in the midst of this latest crisis, following 2 weeks of bombing on the Gaza Strip, this will have very much impact.
OK, so no immediate impact. But looking ahead to the humanitarian situation there, will the deal between Israel and the UAE lead to real change and help?
I don't see very much in that deal to lift the blockade on Gaza, which has absolutely crippled the economy, put the health care and other public sector infrastructure at its weakest for a very long time, given levels of very high youth unemployment, where over 75% of the population is aged under 25, people living in very tightly cramped conditions, and public life being very, very constrained. The 3 to 4 hours of electricity are so random every day that they could come on in the middle of the night when people are least expecting to be receiving it. So in the middle of summer, having no air conditioning or any coolant, and then being locked at home for 48 hours without knowing going forward whether medicines, food would be available. That is the immediate reality of life in Gaza following 2 weeks of bombing and now a lockdown with residents testing positive for COVID within the Gaza Strip.
What about, though, looking at this latest deal? Will it help with anything, bearing in mind the annexation being paused on land there? This initiative, could that really help the Palestinian people with that suspension?
I'm pessimistic, like the ambassador before, because just halting annexation just defers it to another day. What about all the land that has already been annexed? Are there any provisions for that to be returned? Is life for those who are not on annexed land any better because of the way potholes within the West Bank have been created by land that has been annexed? How is the deference of yet more land being annexed, nothing happening to land that is already annexed in settlements, going to make any difference?
So the idea of promoting a two-state solution at the moment, which is what Dominic Raab wants to do, is, and that's one of the purposes, obviously, of his visit. What hopes do you have of that at this stage?
I'd love to see how this second state would be a practical reality with the West Bank and Gaza Strip residents, the Palestinians there, having any semblance of normality in life, the public infrastructure, the healthcare, the education, water supply, electricity, things that you and I take for normal, things which people have been increasingly reliant on during the pandemic, actually giving a sense of life as normal.
What about any influence from America? The US President Trump announced his own peace plan in January. It didn't, of course, though, talk to the Palestinians, did he? But would a Joe Biden presidency change things at all there?
I don't see how a Joe Biden presidency would immediately change the facts on the ground and the reality, given the extent to which land is already being annexed on the West Bank, given the siege of Gaza, and absolutely no talk of lifting that, and also just the deferral of further annexation as opposed to it's been halted completely and reversed. What about land that is already being annexed without any international legitimacy?
Are you restrained by the political situation and what you're trying to do there, Mukhtar? You talk so much about the humanitarian situation. What about your efforts at the moment, particularly bearing in mind COVID?
Absolutely. So in terms of the Gaza Strip, where the Lady Fatima Trust is supporting a deaf school, the reality for the children has been that they are now homebound, having just commenced a new school term, commenced that school term in the midst of a fortnight of daily bombings, These are children who are deaf, and therefore communicating to them what the increased violence around them is really difficult. The psychosocial issues, the mental health, and even ordinary Gazans knowing that the healthcare system is not in a state to be able to cope with the day-to-day requirements of higher hypertension, greater incidence of diabetes there, reliance on food aid. Now, on top of that, to have COVID testing within the 2 million residents of the Gaza Strip, and being assured that the 22 healthcare centers there run by UNRWA would be able to cope with isolating COVID patients in a very densely populated space are very, very high reasons for high anxiety for residents in the Gaza Strip.
Mukhtar, thank you very much indeed for joining us live.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Pleasure.